Throughout the 1990s, the music industry systematically buried one of its oldest audio formats. Retailers cleared their shelves, labels stopped pressing new titles, and by the end of the decade, it barely registered in sales data. The burial was deliberate, because its replacement was cheaper to produce and far more profitable to sell. That was the 1990s. By 2025, that format crossed $1 billion in sales for the first time since 1983. And the people driving that number weren't the ones who remembered it the first time around. The format they buried was the vinyl record. And if you had asked anyone in the music industry about its future in the mid-2000s, they would have told you it was finished. They had no idea what was building underneath. Vinyl records had dominated the commercial music landscape from the 1950s through the early 1980s, a period spanning more than 3 decades of cultural dominance in living rooms and jukeboxes across America. Then the compact disc appeared and changed everything. By 1999, the global music industry had peaked at roughly $21 billion in inflation-adjusted revenue, and compact discs were responsible for the overwhelming majority of that money. By 2002, compact discs accounted for more than 95% of all recorded music sales in the United States. Vinyl didn't just lose the format war, it was erased from the shelves entirely, with retailers devoting their floor space to CDs and cassettes, because that's where the profit margins lived. The music industry had deliberately pushed consumers toward CDs, which were far cheaper to manufacture and far more expensive to sell, making them significantly more profitable than vinyl had ever been. When the compact disc itself began collapsing under the weight of digital piracy, iTunes downloads, and eventually streaming platforms, the entire physical music industry cratered alongside it, with revenue falling by roughly 2/3 from that 1999 peak to its low point around 2014. But while CDs and digital downloads were fighting their own decline, something unusual started happening with vinyl in the background, so quietly that almost nobody in the industry noticed at first. What comes next is the part that still doesn't make sense to most analysts. In 2007, vinyl sales jumped roughly 86% year over year, though that was off such a tiny base that it barely registered in industry reports. Then in 2008, a coalition of independent record store owners launched something called Record Store Day, an annual event designed to celebrate the roughly 1,400 independently owned record shops still surviving across the country, and vinyl sales climbed again. By 2010, annual sales had reached around 2.8 million units, more than double the 2006 low. By 2015, they had hit nearly 12 million. In 2020, vinyl revenue surpassed compact disc revenue for the first time since 1986, and in 2022, vinyl outsold compact discs in total units for the first time since 1987. The RIAA's 2025 year-end report confirmed that 46.8 million vinyl records were sold in the United States that year, generating $1.04 billion in wholesale revenue and marking the 19th consecutive year of growth for a format the industry had actively tried to kill 2 decades earlier. Vinyl was generating more than 3 times the revenue of compact discs and outselling them in units for the 5th straight year, 46.8 million records versus 29.5 million compact discs. The obvious assumption is that this resurgence is being driven by middle-aged collectors reliving their youth, people who grew up with vinyl turntables in their living rooms and are simply buying back the albums they lost when they switched to CDs in the late 1980s. The data tells a completely different story. According to Luminate's market research, roughly 44% of vinyl buyers are under the age of 35, and other analyses put the percentage of new vinyl consumers under 35 closer to 55%. A comprehensive 2025 survey by the Vinyl Alliance, polling over 2,500 respondents across the United States, United Kingdom, and Germany, found that among Gen Z vinyl fans, 76% buy records at least once a month, 80% own a turntable and actively listen, and 50% say they collect vinyl specifically because it provides a break from digital life. 61% said they replace some of their streaming habits with vinyl listening to improve their mental well-being, a higher percentage than either millennials or Gen X reported in the same survey. That's a generation that was born and raised during vinyl's complete mainstream disappearance, and they are now the format's single most enthusiastic customer base, spending more money per capita on records than the people who actually grew up with the format. And here is one of the strangest data points in the entire vinyl economy. According to Luminate, roughly half of the consumers who purchased vinyl records in a 12-month period did not own a record player, and a separate analysis from FutureSource Consulting put that figure at around 40% as of 2025. These buyers are displaying records as home decor, mounting album covers as wall art, and collecting them as physical artifacts of fandom. For a significant share of the market, particularly younger buyers, the vinyl record is no longer functioning as a music delivery system at all, but as a physical object that communicates something about who the owner is and what they care about. No conversation about vinyl's modern commercial economy is complete without acknowledging Taylor Swift, who has been the top-selling vinyl artist in the United States for each of the past 4 years running. Her 2024 album, The Tortured Poets Department, sold 859,000 vinyl copies in its first week alone, the largest vinyl sales week in the modern tracking era by an enormous margin. In 2025, her album The Life of a Showgirl moved 1.6 million copies on vinyl, more than any other artist in the modern era, while the second highest seller that year, Sabrina Carpenter, moved 292,000 copies. Swift didn't invent the strategy of releasing the same album in multiple color variants and store-exclusive editions, but she industrialized it, launching the Tortured Poets Department with 6 different vinyl editions that each sold enough individually to top the weekly vinyl chart on their own. That playbook has now become standard across the industry, from Kendrick Lamar releasing signed limited editions to Billie Eilish pressing albums on recycled material, and the average retail price of a new vinyl record climbed roughly 24% between 2020 and 2025, from about $30 to over $37, with limited edition pressings regularly running $50 to $70 or more. Everything was in place for vinyl to keep climbing smoothly. The demand was accelerating, the audience was younger than anyone predicted, and the economics were increasingly favorable for both artists and retailers. But what nobody in the industry could have anticipated was the single event that nearly destroyed the format's supply chain overnight. On February 6, 2020, a fire broke out at Apollo Masters Corporation in Banning, California, a facility that was one of only 2 factories on the entire planet manufacturing the lacquer discs used in vinyl record production. The blaze took 82 firefighters and 3 hours to contain, and the building, along with everything inside it, was completely destroyed. Apollo had been responsible for an estimated 70 to 85% of the global lacquer supply, with the only remaining facility being MDC, a small operation in Japan. In a single morning, the vinyl industry lost the foundation of its supply chain, and Apollo never rebuilt. The timing was catastrophic because just weeks later, the pandemic hit, and lockdowns sent millions of people searching for home entertainment options. Vinyl sales began surging at the exact moment the infrastructure to meet that demand had been crippled. One label reported going from pressing 295,000 units in 2019 to being on pace for 800,000 in 2021. But the pressing plants could not keep up. Before the boom, ordering a vinyl pressing meant waiting about 6 weeks. And by 2021, lead times had ballooned to an average of 27 weeks, with some manufacturers quoting waits of 12 to 18 months. When Sony placed an order for 500,000 copies of Adele's album on vinyl, the order had to be split across multiple pressing plants, and it delayed the production of other artists' records by up to 9 months. If you're wondering how the industry survived that kind of structural pressure without collapsing entirely, the answer is that the manufacturing side mobilized faster than anyone expected. By 2015, there had been only about 21 vinyl pressing plants operating in the entire United States. But in response to the demand surge, that number more than doubled by 2022, with United Record Pressing, the largest plant in the country, expanding from roughly 40,000 to over 100,000 units of daily capacity. But this wasn't just a manufacturing story anymore. The independent record store ecosystem had become just as central to vinyl's revival as the pressing plants themselves. Record Store Day, which held its first event back in April of 2008, had grown into an annual ritual where fans line up before dawn at local shops for limited edition vinyl releases, expanding into a global phenomenon with participating stores on every continent except Antarctica. Record Store Day 2025 generated over $100 million in revenue for independent record stores across North America. And independent shops now account for roughly 40% of all vinyl sales in the United States, with 84% of Generation Z vinyl fans reporting that they shop for records in physical brick-and-mortar stores. The IFPI's Global Music Report confirmed that vinyl grew 13.7% worldwide in 2025, marking its own 19th consecutive year of global growth. And for only the second time on record, physical music revenue growth actually outpaced digital growth globally. The worldwide recorded music industry reached $31.7 billion in total revenue, with streaming still holding roughly 70% through 837 million paid subscribers. And yet the one physical format that keeps defying the direction everything else is heading is the oldest one in the room. The vinyl revival is not one clean narrative, but several forces colliding at once. It is a tactile rebellion against invisible, algorithmically served music by a generation that wants to hold something physical in their hands and display it on a shelf in their apartment. It is a superfan economy where a dedicated listener will spend $30 to $50 on a record they may never actually play on top of their existing streaming subscription, because vinyl buyers are statistically more likely to be heavy streamers than the average music listener. It is an artist connection story, with 62% of Gen Z buyers saying they purchase vinyl to directly support artists in an era when per-stream payouts amount to fractions of a single cent. And it is a community built around independent record stores that have become cultural gathering places, offering an in-store browsing experience and a sense of belonging that no recommendation algorithm has figured out how to replicate. A format that sold fewer than 1 million records in 2006, that the music industry had actively tried to bury, just crossed the billion-dollar threshold again. And what endures from this story isn't just the vinyl record itself, but what it revealed about what an entire generation was quietly looking for and couldn't find anywhere else.